Yeah, I don't know. We could look at some of the questions together. Oh, maybe we'll talk about one of them and then move on. How about number 9? Why do you think Matthew powers through so many miracle stories one after another? What do you think the point of all of these miracle stories one after another is?
To amaze us.
To amaze us? Okay.
Important for us to know.
Important for us to know? Well, okay, but why do 10 of them in a row then?
Teach the apostles.
To teach the apostles? You guys always look at me like I have some kind of right answer.
You asked the question, you should have the answer.
I wrote it in a way to be open-ended though. Like, why do you think he does it?
To strengthen, our faith and just to be in awe of what God can do. And when you get excited about something, you want to do like, wow, this miracle, and then that miracle,
Okay, so to be excited to have lots of miracles in a row to strengthen faith.
Did any other prophet do that many in a row?
Did any other prophet do that many in a row? No, I don't think so. But we have to face the real question. Did Jesus do that many in a row?
Probably not. I think we just grouped them together.
It does, to me, I think Vicki is right. It does feel kind of grouped together, like they took a number of stories and they put them together. Now, that doesn't mean that they didn't happen, kind of 10 in a row like this, but it does seem to be a literary device. So, I would say it doesn't break my faith, it doesn't harm my faith if Matthew took different episodes from the life of Jesus and put them together to convey a particular meaning. You do that too. If someone asked you what are the most important events in your life, you take a series of things in your life and string them together, and it might sound like they're one after another, and in some cases there might be many moons between them. This is what we do. If you have people that ask you those kind of things, you take a selection of things in your life. One of the things... Oh, go ahead.
In the next chapter, it talks about Matthew's style of writing. Does that have anything?
Matthew's style of writing? Well, what do you think?
I'm looking here, because I can't remember just what they called it, but I never can find what I want. Here.
Does Matthew detail situations that the others don't?
Does Matthew detail situations the others don't?
Gospel writers don't.
Yes, all of the Gospels have some material that's unique to them. Like, for instance, the stories of Joseph are only in... The stories of Joseph when Jesus is being born are only in the Gospel of Matthew. The infancy narrative is only in the Gospel of Luke. So only in Luke does Gabriel appear to Mary, say, you will be the mother of the Most High, the mother of the Son of the Most High. Power of the Most High will overshadow you.
141 in here. I don't know how to pronounce it, but Chiasm. They talk about his style.
Oh, chiasm, yeah. So it means like, the best way to see it is actually with a marker. So a chiasm is like a rhyming scheme, or you can see it in poetry, but like what you start with, you end with. So it pairs like this, and it has a way of highlighting the central term or the central part. So again, it's like what you'll find very often in Matthew is that he'll start with a theme and then he'll return back to it. That the beginning and the end of a section or a story will parallel each other. And there can be a great number of schemes. So ABCBA is a very simple one. There's much more complex ones. Sometimes people try and fit the whole Gospel of Matthew into a chiastic structure. And maybe you can do some of that. I think there's certainly insights to be gained. Some of it definitely is the literary style of Matthew. But I think it's worth asking questions like that, like what is the impact of the 10 stories in a row on you as the reader or on you as the listener, hearing the gospel? And one of the things that I would offer to you is I think it brings out different dimensions of the personality of Jesus. It brings out different parts of his ministry. He's doing different things, like the woman with the hemorrhage brings out a particular kind of compassion on someone who has suffered a long time. And healing the daughter of the synagogue official, raising her from the dead, has a different flavor than healing someone who has battled a hemorrhage for years. And those all have a different flavor than the first set of miracles must have been in chapter 8, because I don't see them here in these notes. That like each one of them brings out some of the particular dimensions of the life of Jesus. And if I'm not, this one ends healing the demoniac. Okay. The two blind men. I don't remember if this is on the way to Jericho. This is on page 73. The two blind men. One of the unique things about them is they call Jesus the Son of David. The Son of David. What sounds to you unique about that? Calling Jesus the Son of David.
I always wondered why they did it.
Why they would do it. Who would be the Son of David?
Well, the Messiah. They're trying to.
The Messiah is the Son of David. Yes, that's a connection that they're going to make. Who else would be the Son of David? David was the king. David was the king of Israel. So the Son of David should be the
King of Israel.
rightful king of Israel. It's the title that you would give to a king. But that introduces a puzzle, because at this time, who is king in Israel? Well, in one dramatic sense, Caesar, absolutely. Like Rome is in charge, and then they kind of have a local puppet king. I don't know if it was one of the Herods at this time, or if it was like Archelaus, or there's a few others that were in the neighborhood. By the time Jesus dies on the cross, another Herod is... It's Pilate and Herod, I think, right? But it's a different Herod than Herod the Great. Like, it's a different Herod than the one that tried to kill baby Jesus in Bethlehem. By then, it's like his son or his grandson. But calling Jesus the Son of David is a messianic title. It's the first time that this title has been used in the gospel so far. The first time that someone has called Jesus a Son of David. The apostles haven't even ventured to do that yet. And this is kind of disruptive, because calling Jesus the Son of David would mean what? You would expect the Son of David. We go very much to Messiah, but I think the Jews of the first century would hear this as the rightful king. Yeah, calling Jesus the Son of David would be as the rightful king of Israel. He's the Son of David. And if he's the Son of David, now again, you have to take off your Christian hat for a second. If Jesus is the Son of David and he's the rightful king, what would many people be expecting him to do?
Throw out the Romans.
to get rid of the Romans. You know, that the son of David and the new king of Israel is going to raise an army and get rid of the Romans. Is that what Jesus does? No. Jesus is not all that interested in raising an army. He doesn't seem to care all that much about the Romans at all. So the disciples kind of panic. These guys called Jesus the son of David. Why do you think the disciples panic? Why do you think the disciples panic?
They haven't recognized him like that?
They haven't recognized him like that? Maybe.
They're talking about, they're thinking of taking over the Romans.
They'd be concerned that the Romans would catch wind of it. Like, you know, whether Jesus had talked to them about being the son of David or not already, we don't know. But for someone to use that title about Jesus is one of the things that could provoke the wrath of Rome, because they would see Jesus as a rival claim for the throne. And the Romans, they're not horrible overlords. I mean, in the Gospels, they're made out to be these really bad people who are constantly doing bad things. But if you look in history, the Romans were actually nicer conquerors than most. Most conquerors, like, you know, you were kind of better off dead. You know, they'd burn your cities to the ground and then you'd die, or they'd burn all your food up and steal it all and then you'd die, or they'd give you diseases and then you'd die, or they'd torture you and then you die. The Romans had this, they didn't want the societies that they conquered to collapse because they knew that that created more problems for them. So they certainly would eliminate the army. You don't get to have an army against the Romans. But, you know, once the army is out of the way, like, the society was largely left to function. Why? Because if the society falls apart, then you have to fix it. Like, you have to put all of your energy into rebuilding things because they're gone, and you don't have the energy to put into making it secure and defensible and protecting your new territory. So the Romans, overall, they're not like horrible conquerors. Like the Vikings, you know, the Vikings, I think this is probably why Minnesota has such a bad football team, is because the Vikings in history were awful. Like, if you want to name yourself anything, calling yourself Vikings isn't a very positive thing to do, because the Vikings would often just come in and raid a city and burn it down and then leave. And then when you rebuilt it, they'd come back next year and they'd burn it down again and take all your money and then they'd leave. They weren't interested in rule. They weren't interested in civilizing things. They just were going to take and steal and pillage, and then you were going to be left with the ruins. So I'm pretty sure that it's like karma or payback. You named yourself for the Vikings. The other group of people in history that gets known for this are called the Vandals. And it's a word that even made its way all the way into the English language. Vandalism. It makes its way into Latin, and it makes its way into English. And it means literally behaving like a Vandal. And the Vandals were like an earlier version of the Vikings, who were grouchier, if you could be grouchier. But the Vikings were pretty awful. So this is like the significance of blind men calling Jesus the son of David is tremendous. This is like a trumpet blast, you know? So much for Jesus being quiet in the countryside. Son of David is like going to get people's blood churning a little bit. And so the disciples kind of go into panic attacks like, shh, don't say that, don't say that. But Jesus lets them call him the son of David. And there's such an odd, such an ironic twist about this. What is the ironic twist? There's a dripping irony here. Because are the blind men correct? Yes, Jesus is actually the son of David.
But if they can't see him, how did they know who was walking by?
So the blind men don't see him physically, but they see him better spiritually than the people who have eyes. The people who see Jesus in his physical form. And that's kind of this irony. It's this ironic play in the story that, like, the people that are blind see, and the seeing ones are actually the blind ones. And you find this very, very often in the Gospels. There's always doing something like this, where there's this tremendous irony at work. Like, St. Paul talks about, I have used the weak and the lowly of the world to bring to nothing those who think they are something. Like, you know, the wise and the powerful. Jesus shows up in a Roman backwater. It'd be like being born in, I don't know, Fezzidan. You know, like, it's just nowhere. It's not really on the map, maybe even a smaller town than that. You know, like, Jesus isn't well thought of. And many of the apostles and many of our saints, I mean, one of the things that's really, really crazy is you all know the name of Saint Mother Teresa. Do you know where Mother Teresa is from? Albania. She was, again, from a country that was barely on the map and ruled by communists and officially atheistic. She was someone where if you were looking at the annals of the history of the world, you'd have no reason to put her on there. But because of what she did in the name of Christ, because of God's grace working through her, now millions, billions know her name. And her story is told. And there's lots of really famous people who had lots of money and palaces and villas and homes and vacationed in Tahiti and who knows what. And history doesn't know a lick about them. So it's kind of this demonstration that God is actually fond of taking people who are in the middle of nowhere and from the middle of nowhere and think of themselves as not very talented and putting them actually in the middle of everything. Which means that you're not very safe living in North Dakota. God seems to be particularly fond of little out-of-the-way places that everyone else considers flyover country. But you do want to be, like, that kind of irony is something to appreciate. The blind see and the seeing are blind. Or at least blind to some of the truth. And what's interesting is, like, their hearts, or another interesting part of it, is that their hearts see Jesus first, and then Jesus heals them, and then their eyes can see too. But it was like sight in the heart that was first. And that's what Jesus seems to care more about. You know, these are the first people that he has allowed to call him the Son of David. That's a very significant title. This is taking a step in a different direction. Jesus comes into the house. Jesus enters the house. That is a little bit of strange language. Like, it feels a little odd in English. I think all of the translations render it just a little bit differently. It very well could be an echo of temple language. Because one of the things that we don't hear in English is, I think the name for the temple is Habayit HaKadosh, which means like the holy house. And so if you said, I'm going to the house, you could very well say that in English, but what you would be saying in Hebrew, what you would be meaning in Hebrew is, I'm going to the temple. And it adds a different flavor to the story, because the temple is where?
The Lord lived and sacrifices were offered.
Right, and it's city in Jerusalem. So it's on the east side of Jerusalem. It's on the tallest hill in town. It's this giant edifice with pillars and walls and columns and those kind of things. Herod had rebuilt, he had been working on it. You remember the disciples get mad at Jesus at one point for talking about the stones be thrown down, and the temple had been under construction for 46 years. Their road construction season was longer than ours. But, like, it's fascinating to use a temple reference here because the temple is the house of God. The temple is the place where you go, where you encounter God. But you have this strange juxtaposition or dichotomy because the temple is a physical building where you go to encounter God, and what's supposed to be in the holy place in the temple is the Ark of the Covenant. Well, the Ark isn't there, because Jeremiah took it and hid it. That's the last time it's mentioned in the Old Testament. And so when they rebuilt the temple, they just have a flat rock that they sort of still have as the center of their worship, this sort of open space. And so you have a house of God that's empty, and here you have a house that's full. You have a house of God with the Jewish leadership who don't want to believe Jesus, who are rejecting him, who are not fulfilling their promises in the covenant. And then you have two blind men who are supposed to not see, and yet they're seeing truly. And do you see how, like, when you tease out some of these details, when you start putting them into a context, it gives a fascinating flavor to it, because one of the things that Jesus is coming to do is to bring a new worship. He's coming to bring a new way of worshiping God. The temple system, the sacrificial system of Judaism, is going to be replaced or superseded in the sacramental life of the church. But it just has such this strange sort of feel to it, because Jesus is going to the house, and the house should be the temple on the hill, and this is a place where people go to pray. Jesus goes to pray there too, many times in his life. But here it uses the same language, and when the people come and their eyes are opened, who do they see in the center of the temple? Jesus himself. Their eyes see Christ. And so in the old temple, in the old covenant, they might be able to see the Ark of the Covenant, but the Ark of the Covenant is just a symbol. Now, in this new temple, in this house, in miniature, the disciples see Jesus himself, who is actually the incarnate God. So there's just some beautiful reversals with that. Jesus touches their eyes to heal them. Physical touch is important. When we pray for healing, this is one of the things that I would encourage you to take to heart and to think about. When Jesus prays for healing, most of the time, even though he's capable of using his words to heal, he's done that a few times. He did that with, I don't know if he does it with Jairus, but he does it with like the slave of the synagogue official, where he just speaks and the man is healed. He just says a word. So Jesus can heal with his words. But even for him, most of the time he heals by touching people and touching the body part that's broken or injured. So here, I don't know if it specifically says this, but he reaches out to touch their eyes. Now, certainly I think this is something that's good to be gentle with, but I feel like as Catholics, we get into a mentality that's very much, when we pray for healing, it's kind of hands off, like we just sort of mystically pray for healing in our spirit bodies. You know, someone asks you to pray for them, and maybe you'll do it later when you close your eyes and have a chance. But I think this is something where some encouragement from our Protestant brothers and sisters is helpful. Like, it can be really good just to invite someone, like, is it okay if we hold hands and let's pray right now? You know, it doesn't have to wait until later, and it doesn't have to be a super awkward or long-winded prayer. It can just be a very simple prayer from your heart for healing. But it's like, if Jesus is willing to use physical touch, even though he's capable of healing with words, why do we feel so reserved about it? Why is that something that feels so foreign to us? And part of it's probably foreign because we just don't do it. And so I simply want to encourage you, like, yes, it's good to pray for healing. It's good to pray when you're on your own. But if someone is standing in front of you and they ask you to pray for someone, like, it's really good just to say, like, let's hold hands and pray, or can I put my hand on your shoulder? And it's probably going to feel awkward the first time. You're probably going to feel out of place and like you don't know what you're doing, and that's okay. Learning new life skills is hard sometimes, and it can feel awkward. You know, if you've never made a dish from Southeast Asia before and you don't know what you're doing, it isn't the most comfortable thing to do. Well, it's the same thing with this kind of prayer. And sometimes when it comes to spiritual things, it's like as soon as we hit the awkwardness, we just, oh no, can't do that. As soon as we run into those things, we sort of recoil in fear. And my encouragement would be, this is a good place to stretch out in faith. This is a good place to start. Whether it starts with a spouse at home or someone sitting next to you at church, it's okay if it doesn't feel right the first time. If you do it 100 times, it'll probably feel better. I feel like we would be terrified if we actually knew what was going through kids' heads when they were learning to walk. Sometimes I wonder that. Parents do all kinds of cruel things to kids learning to walk. You want them to walk toward you, and then what do? You back up. You move the goalposts. And then it comes to your own prayer life, and when God moves the goalposts, you're like, that's not fair. You can't do that. You can't change plans. And it's like, well, you did when you were teaching kids to walk. And maybe the Lord is also teaching us to walk or to be stretched in our faith or our belief. So, I simply want to encourage you. When you ask people to pray for you, when you, or when they ask you, to be bold enough to recognize, this is probably going to feel strange, but here we go. There can be a great gift in that. And to pray like you mean it. Sometimes as Catholics, I think we also get stuck on, Lord, maybe, possibly, if it's your will, you could probably help someone just a little bit with their pain. It's either God is God or he isn't. And you may as well ask him to cure something. Think what it would do for your own faith if you laid hands on someone and prayed for healing and they were healed. Where you realize, that was not because of the quality of my prayer. That was not me. This is the work of the Lord. Sometimes praying for other people could actually be for you too. Think of it. If you prayed for someone who was blind and they were all of a sudden not blind, and it's that would be a stretch. And in a way, I think these kind of miracles maybe aren't meant to happen every day. Jesus certainly is about more than our physical happiness or our physical healing here in this world. But they're certainly meant to be more common than never. And sometimes maybe it doesn't happen because we don't ask. So there's certainly a lot to unpack with that one. The next one is the healing of the demoniac. This is a mute one. And again, there's this kind of irony. Matthew is a big fan of this. So the mute one will start speaking, and the ones who have voices will be silent. And so again, it's who is really, what is speech about? And remember, there's so many different concepts you can play with here. In the Gospel of John, Jesus is called the Word of God. And so you have this theme of Jesus as the Word who speaks, a Word who is spoken. And you have this image that's playing with that, this image that is working along that dimension. Because one who is physically unable to speak is rendered able to speak again. He's cured from this demon. And the ones who speak are rendered speechless. I think that's what it actually says about them. I think it says, and the people around him were speechless. They had never seen such signs before. They had never seen such wonders. Nothing like this has been seen in Israel before. I think this is something that one of you touched on, like people are coming to faith. And what you see is they're starting to question who Jesus is. One of the fundamental questions of the gospel, one of the things that it's really after, is the question, who is Christ? Who is Jesus? We, as Christians, it's like we already have an answer. We already know, and we have to take a step back from that. Like the Gospels are trying to help us be curious again, because what you have for the apostles, what you have for people who see him, is someone who looks and breathes and talks like an ordinary human person. And the ordinariness of him is really, really profound. And so it's through all of these different signs and all of these different things that he does that people are starting to wonder, like, who is this man? Who is he? These aren't normal things to do. This isn't how people normally behave. He speaks with words that are different. Because we've gotten used to the reality, we've gotten used to the truth that God became man. But that's actually the fundamental claim of Christianity that sets it apart from every other religion on earth. This is what it means to be Christian in a very direct way, is that the eternal, all-powerful God took on flesh and became like one of us to suffer and die for our sins so that we could be with him forever in heaven. But no other religion has a God that does that. Not in Islam, not in Hinduism, not in Buddhism. Like, no other religion claims that the eternal became finite. That God entered time. He entered history in a particular place in a particular time. So they start to question who Jesus is. This drumbeat of miracles. He's revealed himself to be the one. What they start to see, I think, is God reaching out. These are the signs of the Messiah. These are the things that the book of Isaiah says the Messiah will do. And so it's like Jesus takes that. This is what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to do these, heal the sick, free those imprisoned, raise the dead, that kind of thing. I think we saw that on one of the previous pages. Oh no, I didn't put that one on there. But like if you look at the passage in Isaiah that talks about the Messiah, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, for he has anointed me to bring glad tidings to the poor, liberty to captives, to heal the brokenhearted, to set the wounded or the captive free. These are the deeds of the Messiah. And these series of stories have touched on many different areas of life, many different dimensions of Jesus as the Messiah. And so one of the responses here, you could say it raises this question, who is Jesus? And on one side, you're going to have the disciples who are probably a little bit skeptical, but they're starting to come to real faith, like Jesus is God. They're getting there. They're kind of slow and knuckleheaded. And then you have the Pharisees and the scribes, and this is where they reject Jesus and say, like, the source of his power is evil. By Beelzebul, by the prince of demons, you cast out demons. Jesus is like, well, if Satan is casting out Satan, then his kingdom ain't going to last real long. Like, this isn't going to be a good policy if he's attacking himself, because he's just going to be left with less or with nothing. So they seem to be kind of jealous. They seem to be like Jesus